Hey, welcome back. It's Cam, and today we're going to be building on how to build a Rebirth system, part 2. And this is just to build up on something one of my subscribers have brought up, that the last video did not show the cash value that the player is incrementing, and it did not show exactly how much it will cost and what the player will get when they do Rebirth. So this video is just to clear up a lot of those things. And at the top right here, we have a UI that dynamically displays how much cash the player has. We have our leader stats with cash, and then we have rebirths starting at 0 for the first player. So when the player joins, they'll start at 0 rebirths. When we click cash here, we see that we increment it by $10 every single time we click cash. So that's the starting value for like level 1 player. If we click rebirth, one rebirth will cost you $1,000. It will ask you, are you sure you want to rebirth? Your cash will reset to 0. You'll unlock +1 rebirth, and your cash multiplier will increase, letting you earn more money faster. Now we can build on this by we can cancel this, or we can just click confirm, which will reset our cash to 0. But our rebirth will increment to +1. So if we go back to the rebirth, your next rebirth will cost $2,000, and that's based off of the rebirth that the player has. So depending on how many rebirths the player has will determine exactly what the rebirth cost will be for the next one. So if you don't have enough, it will display not enough cash to rebirth. You need $2,000 as well. You can get this entire file down in the description below. It's available. And now that we have a rebirth, we should see a multiplier of ×2. So now every time we click cash, we went from $10 to $20. So it's gonna be a lot easier to reach $2,000 with our cash multiplier being applied. So that is just a walkthrough on exactly how the system works and how we built on it for the last video. Let's go ahead and hop into the scripts and see how all of this works together. So let's see, we're gonna start with our replicated storage. First thing, we wanna define a module called RebirthModule, and I'm just gonna walk you through this. So we start with our base stats. So we have a module requirement for our base cash is going to be $1,000, the cash needed for rebirth. So this will be the cost to apply a rebirth. And this right here, the module's multiplier will be the multiplier that will be applied per rebirth. So we're going to be using these as base stat values that we can adjust as basically settings. And the default is going to be set for 0 rebirth. So whenever the player starts, this is something we can reference to let the default values update in case the player has just started playing our game. Down here, all we have is like one large function, but it handles everything with just one simple function call. So this function, module.rebirth, passing in the player value, all we're doing is accessing the player's leader stats. If no leader stats exist, we just return. And right here, we're going to access the cash stat within the leader stats if we can find leader stats for that player, and the rebirth stat for the player if the leader stats exist for the player as well. Now, if no cash or no rebirths exist, we just return the function again. So we want to make sure that these values exist before we start playing around with them. Next up, we're going to calculate the cost of the rebirth. And all we do is we grab the rebirth count by accessing the player's leader stats value for rebirths, how many rebirths they're currently sitting at. And we're going to access the required cash by going to module.requirements base cash. So the requirements is going to be based off of the base cash value, which is set to $1,000 per rebirth. And then we're just going to multiply that by the player's rebirth count. So every time the player's rebirth goes up by 1, it will increase the cost for the next rebirth. Next up, we're going to check if the player has enough cash. If the cash value, the leader stat value, is less than the required cash, then we just return false. That means that if they don't have enough cash, we're just not going to run the rebirth and increment the player's cash value. And then we're going to if they do have enough cash and that checks out, then we're just going to reset the cash to 0, and we're going to increment the rebirth to +1. And we're going to update the cash multiplier as well per the player's rebirth. So the new multiplier will be the module.multipliers.cash value times their rebirth count, their current rebirth count sitting in leader stats. If the new multiplier is less than 1, then we're just going to set it to 1. That's the default starting value for the multiplier just to begin. And then we're going to set the attribute so when you're setting an attribute, you're actually also creating an attribute. So we're going to create an attribute called cash multiplier. and we're passing in new multiplier as well that we got up here. So we get that value right here, so it knows exactly what the count is for the multiplier that should be applied. Then we're just going to return true, rebirth successful, new cost for the next rebirth will display the module requirement times the base cash and the rebirth value of the current player. So I know that was a lot, but if you just follow this entire module right here, the only thing you really need to focus on and edit is just these requirements right here. How much it will cost per rebirth and the multiplier applied per rebirth. And you really don't need to touch this right here. This is just your default value for the rebirth. Next up, we're going to hop back into replicated storage, and we have 3 remote events that we created. We have a cash click event, so whenever the player clicks cash, we're able to increment the value for the player, letting them know that they got cash. We're going to have a rebirth event, letting the server know that we want to buy or purchase a rebirth. And we have a rebirth error event in case the player doesn't have enough to purchase a rebirth. We can actually display information back to the player, letting them know that, hey, you don't have enough to make this purchase. And once we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and hop down into script service and hop into the cash click handler. So this is a very simple on listener event that we are applying in service script. So this right here listens for that cash button that we created right here with a remote event, cash click event right here that we are accessing. So we're accessing the services with replicated storage. We need to know where we're looking, and then we're getting that cash click event that we created up here in the remote event, and then we're establishing the base cash cost locally within the service script at $10. So that will be the starting value for all players, which is $10. So if you want the starting value for a level 1 player to be $100 cash every time they click the button, then you can just adjust it right here. The cash click event is just using an on-server event to listen for when the client wants to increase the cash. Then we connect that to a function and passing in the player that is clicking that event. And then we access that player's leader stats value. And if no leader stats exist, then we return the function. And then we're checking if their cash value exists within that leader stats. Same thing. If no cash exists, then we return. These are just backups just to make sure that these stat values exist before we start playing around with them. And then we're going to apply the multiplier if there's a multiplier to even be applied to it. So the multipliers, we're going to get that attribute that we established with cash multiplier back in that module script. And we are going, if the player has a cash multiplier greater than 1, or if they have a cash multiplier available, then it will be applied right here, or it will be set to 1 as a default. So if the multiplier exists and the multiplier is less than 1, then we're just going to default it to a multiplier of 1. Now, local earned is going to be the earned cash, the new cash value that we're going to be applying to the base cash times the multiplier of the player per their rebirths. And the cash.value is we're accessing the player's cash leader stat value and incrementing it by the new earned value. So we're playing around with the stats, the base stats, applying the multiplier, and then we're updating how much the earned cash is going to be going forward. And then we have a default value, a multiplier plus 1, multiplier of 1 to default to the base cash of $10 per click. So that is the cash click handler right there. It's just one listener event, one listener for the server side. And then next up, we're going to hop into the leader stats just to take a look at that. And we establish our leader stats folder, just basic stuff. And then we establish our cash value. This can be anything, any type of currency that you want. It could be gems, it could be coins, it can be rebirths, it can be anything you want. And same thing right here, we established the rebirth count so we can visually see exactly what the player's rebirths are sitting at. And this is our starting value, so you can set this to 0 if you want the player to start with 0 cash upon start playing your game. So this is really the only thing you would really need to tweak within the leader stats script right here. Next up, we have our rebirth handler. This is a very important one because this checks whether we have enough cash to make a rebirth purchase, and it will increment our value when the player confirms with the text button, letting the server know that, hey, I have enough cash, or check it, see if I have enough cash to make a purchase for a rebirth. So this is another server-side listener event where we are accessing the rebirth event that we created up here in replicated storage. And we're just getting the services for replicated storage. We're requiring the module script, RebirthModule, And so we can access all that function that we created, and we're accessing the rebirth event that we created in replicated storage to listen from the client side. And then we have our rebirth error event, which displays back to the client that, hey, you don't have enough to make a rebirth in the rare and unlikely event that the player doesn't have enough cash to make a purchase. So it seems complicated, but we're just gonna keep it very simple right here. It's just a simple listener. You're grabbing that rebirth event and you're listening for when the player clicks that rebirth event. So when they click that rebirth event, they click that button to confirm, the server side is gonna listen for that rebirth event. We're gonna connect that to a function and we're gonna pass in the player that triggered that event. And then we're gonna run a success message. We're gonna access the rebirth module and the rebirth function that we created in the module script and pass in the player value that wants to access a new rebirth or check and see if they have enough for a rebirth. And all we're doing is checking if we get a successful rebirth. If success, then we print the player's name, rebirth. This is just information for us. Else warn that the player rebirth failed because they don't have enough money. And if the player rebirth failed, then we're just going to fire a client event back to the client to display a text label letting them know that they do not have enough to make the purchase. So this fires back to when we're firing the client, we are passing in the player that we are sending the message back to, and the message that needs to be fired back to them as well of, hey, you don't have enough right now to make the purchase as well. So it's very simple, and as I said, all this is available down in the description below, but I don't want to overcomplicate this because as we keep making more changes to a lot of these scripts right here, they can get very complex. So that's why I start off very simply with basic systems that are very scalable to pretty much any game that you want to create. So if we hop over here to our confirm frame and we look at the starter GUI, we can see that we have the entire setup for our frame, our confirm frame that pops up when we click rebirth, and then we have our confirm button and our cancel button. Let me go ahead and make these visible. We go into view, properties, visible. Okay, I'm going to make this temporarily visible for right now. And so we can see that we have our confirm button, we have our cancel button, and we're simply asking, are you sure you want to rebirth? And as you can see, we have a text label right here showing that it is dynamically updating, and your cash will reset to 0, your unlock will be +1 rebirth, and your cash multiplier will increase, letting you earn more money faster. So this is very descriptive to the player, letting them know what they get in return for actually rebirthing, which allows for continuous progression and limitless play because players are incentivized to play again because they'll be able to rebirth even faster the next time. So that is the basic setup for the GUI, for the confirm frame GUI. This is for the local script of the updating the cost. So if we go here, text label. So this displays the exact cost for how much the next rebirth will cost. And we are accessing the local player and we're waiting for the player's leader stats to exist. And we are accessing the player's rebirths as well. And we are checking that there is a text label available with script.parent. So when we call script.parent, since the local script is nested inside the text label, all we need to do is call the script that we're in and the parent of that script to access that text label. So the base cost must match the rebirth module. So the base cost for a rebirth is $1,000. And then we have a simple emoji right here just to make it a lot more pleasing to the eye. And then we have an update cost function where we just call on that base cost, multiply that by the rebirth value, whatever the player's rebirth count is currently sitting at, +1. And then we update the text label, text, with string.format and rebirth cost, inserting the emoji that we created up here to a string with the cost value, the new cost value that we created right here. And then we just call on that to update on load. So upon player loading, it will display exactly what the new rebirth cost will be. So we're going to update whenever the rebirth count changes, with rebirths accessing the player's rebirths and getting a property change signal of the value of that leader stat value and connect that to the updated cost function that we created right here. So you don't need the parentheses at the end. We're just essentially calling the function right here. So that is for the dynamic rebirth cost right there. Next up, we're going to go ahead and hop into the, let's see, confirm button, cancel button. Yep. That is basically it. The cash button and the rebirth button. So the rebirth button right here handles, you can pretty much ignore these sounds right here. They're just for aesthetic purposes only. Main thing we want to focus on is making sure that we're accessing the right location with the services of replicated storage, and we want to access the rebirth event, a remote event that we created, and we're going to access the confirm frame by going script.parent.parent to get to that confirm frame right here. And then once we're inside the confirm frame, we can reference that to access the confirm button inside of the frame and the cancel button inside the frame. Right here, all we're doing is establishing sounds, applying the sound ID, the volume, and where it should be parented to. Next up, we're going to go ahead and show the confirmation UI with script.parent, mouse button one click. So we're listening with an event. We're listening for a mouse button click, and we're connecting that to a function with confirm frame, making it visible. So that confirm frame will become visible upon clicking the rebirth button. So script.parent would be this rebirth button right here. Anytime we click that, we're just setting that to true to be visible. Now, confirm rebirth is we're going to confirm with the confirm button, access to the confirm button within that rebirth confirm frame. All we're doing is playing a confirm sound, and we are firing to the server that we want to check and see if we have enough cash to purchase a rebirth right here. So this is where we fire to the server that rebirth event. So that rebirth event was found up here. We created it right here, and we're firing to the server to that rebirth handler, which will check the RebirthModule script to see if the player has enough cash to make a rebirth purchase. And we're doing a confirm frame.visible false. So upon a confirmation, we will automatically just make that frame invisible as well. Even if the player doesn't have enough cash as well, we'll just display back to the player that they don't have enough cash as well with a text label pop up. Next up will be canceling the rebirth. This will just simply set it to false. So we're setting the confirm frame.visible to false, and we're just playing a simple sound, letting the player know that they've canceled their decision to purchase a rebirth. All right, so that is it for the rebirth button. Next up, we have the pretty much the not enough frame. So if we hop over here, this checks the listens on the client side with on-client event for whether the player did not have enough to make a purchase. So we're accessing replicated storage, getting the rebirth error event that we created right here, and we are accessing the text label with script.parent. So we're in this script, and the parent of that script is going to be that text label right here, and we're setting that text label to false to hide initially. Next up, we're going to listen with that rebirth event, and on the client side, from the server side, to see if the player did not have enough to make the purchase. We're going to connect that to a function, passing in the message from the server, and accessing the text label.text to display an emoji and concatenate that to the message that gets displayed from the server side. And then we're just setting the text label to visible to true, so it'll become visible. And then we're going to have a task.delay to hide after 5 seconds. So this will hide that little text label that displays, hey, you don't have enough cash right now to make a purchase, come back later kind of thing. And then we're going to pass in a function where we just update the visible property of the text label to false upon the 5 seconds finishing. So that was a lot. It was definitely a updated version of the rebirth system that we created in the last video that we created together. But this right here is a lot more robust, it's a lot more scalable, and I'm very happy that my subscribers are actually letting me know exactly what they want to see in their systems, because the more clear you guys are with letting me know exactly what you want, the better it's going to be for you in terms of having systems that just work right out the box. So yeah, this is a very scalable system. You can apply it to really pretty much anything. It's done for you down in the description as well. So if you want it, go ahead and grab it down below. But yeah, this is how the system works. You just start off with a cash value of 10. And of course you can add data store later, you can add a number of other systems to build on top of it, but this gives you a working right out of the box rebirth system that you can apply to any game that you want. And this is the same system that I use in my games. It's the same system that you guys can use in tycoons, obbies, or even simulators as well, especially simulators. So if we click on rebirth, our first initial rebirth cost will be $1,000. Your cash will reset to 0. Your unlock will be a +1 rebirth, and your cash multiplier will increase, letting you earn more money faster. Click confirm, 1 rebirth count, and now we're doing $20 every time we click the cash button. So that was the rebirth system simplified, and I hope that was very helpful to you guys. I hope you guys understood exactly how everything was put together. It was a lot, I know, but the first thing I would suggest you do is go back to my first video on how we created the simplified rebirth system, and then apply this system on top of it by going through it step by step. Pause the video and just type it out, because that will help you learn as well. And if you don't want to do that, feel free to hop down into the description and get yourself a copy of the script right down below. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.